Okay, welcome to Borak Bursa, where we talk about everything about everyday Malaysian finances. Today we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Shaun here on my left, who is a medical doctor turned VC investor. So I think we're going to have a lot of things to talk about. Of course, someone that needs no introduction, Mr. Chuck on my left here, that represents the everyday investor.
Yeah, the guy who doesn't know anything. I mean, I'm not saying that investors don't know anything, but I don't know anything. Okay, Shaun. So, quite an interesting history that you have. You used to be a doctor.
Yes.
Are you still a doctor? Like, do you still do practice?
No. I've no time for practice now.
Right.
So full time running the firm right now. I mean, I've worn many hats. I think on my journey to get here, and we can talk a little bit about that. But at one point in my life, I called myself a medical doctor. Yes.
So how long did that go on for? Before you decided to go into like?
So I was in medicine for a couple of years. I specialized in chronic disease, and after that, out of the kind of the problem I was facing was that I was only seeing one patient at a time. So I wanted to kind of multiply or duplicate myself.
Scale yourself.
And so I said, look, let me kind of create some kind of software to kind of duplicate myself and help the other patients that I can't see. And so that led to a health tech startup. I didn't call it that at that time, right? This was like in 2015, and when I started doing that, I before long I realized what I was doing. I was running a startup. I built that for.
So were you still running your practice and the startup?
At the very beginning, I was both in the hospital and running the startup.
Wow.
Okay.
So and then the struggle for me, I think, was a bit of a time balance, obviously.
Yeah.
And then when I realized I was biting off more than I can chew. And that's how I said, okay, look, let's try this. And I was enjoying myself, right? So let's try this full time, and so I built the startup for about 6 years.
Which startup was that?
So it's called Savor of Life.
Okay, Savor of Life.
Yeah, and then after we kind of I came out of Savor of Life in 2021.
Yeah.
And after that, I jumped straight into and that was kind of the peak of COVID, right? So you see, I did angel investing. I worked for a really large digital health project between 2021 and 2022, and then at the end of 2023 I launched the VC firm. So it's a bit of a journey, but I kind of compressed it for you guys. Yeah.
At what point in time did you actually quit the medical profession officially? And what was it the straw that broke the camel's back, so to say?
I'm still in healthcare. So right now, as a VC investor, we only invest in healthcare.
Right.
So I haven't really left the fraternity in that sense. I still meet up with my old buddies and all that. We still talk, but it was just from a macro level. You just can't you can't pop in the clinic in the morning and then come out and run a business in the afternoon. It just didn't work for me that way. Yeah.
Right. Fair enough. And now 17.5 VC. I understand that you guys are based handling the Southeast Asian region.
Yes. So we invest kind of all across Southeast Asia because that's where kind of our network is.
Yeah.
But the fund itself is is domiciled in the US. So we raise internationally and we invest regionally. But yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time. We're kind of putting money, and it's kind of a dream come true for me because I want to, or at least my personal kind of desire is to see healthcare change in 2040 and 2050, and then in order to get products and systems and things that they use, en masse at that time. All these products and companies, all that are in pre-seed right now, or ideation.
Okay.
And so, our whole thesis is, we find these guys that need to be accelerated, that need to kind of come out and be successful in the market, and we invest in them and bring them on the journey.
Let's back it up a little bit. What kind of problems are you guys looking to solve in the region with regards to healthcare specifically?
Very good question. I think as a whole, if you look kind of internationally, right?
Yeah.
You've got a couple of diasporas coming out. So you've got you've got kind of the US kind of healthcare. Mm-hmm. You've got EU. The Middle East is a bit of a blur for me, and then there's kind of Asia. Right?
Okay.
So Europe is a bit heterogeneous in terms of the healthcare. So you can't take something from Berlin and shift it to France, and the laws and the regulations are different. In the US, it's its own little country, right? They have their own system, their own FDAs, their own Medicaid, Medicare, and all that. In Asia, there is a bit of an overlap, at least in Southeast Asia, in kind of the 7 to 8 countries that we have. And what I'm trying to say is that a lot of our problems are homogenous, in a sense that the diseases we deal with, the kind of the communication problems that we tackle with, that we need to tackle, and some of the main things I think we see is, in the front, healthcare is actually quite good. Like, people actually travel to Malaysia to get good healthcare, right? Singapore as well. So people travel in from Philippines, from Indonesia. We even had people from the US fly in to get cheaper treatments, same value treatment for like 10% of the cost.
Yeah.
Right. So on the surface, healthcare is doing okay, but if you ask anybody from within the system, they'll tell you that, look, we haven't really had that much of innovation or meaningful innovation in the past kind of 10, 20 years.
But why do you think, say Malaysia, for example, we have this issue now with medical card insurance costs rising, and government stepping in and doing all that.
Yes.
Why are we not having any? Why do you think? What's your view?
I think there's a bit of a disconnect between the people running the insurance and the people actually giving the care.
Okay.
I don't know if this can be said on camera, but
say it.
And I get a lot of flack whenever I say this. So, insurance companies don't really run insurance anymore, right? I heard a statement that really resonates with me. The insurance companies or insurance as a business has evolved to such a state where they are in the business of not handing out money.
Right.
Right. And that's sad because, look, the whole premise or the whole idea of insurance is that, everybody puts into a pot.
Yeah.
And then when somebody needs it from that, group of people, you draw from the pot.
Yeah.
Right. But when the pot doesn't want to give you money, then, it doesn't work. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the struggle or kind of the gripe that I have, and some of the people that we work with in the insurance industry. We see kind of a disconnect between the people who are actually running the insurance companies, the way they look at premium policies, the way they price it, the way they release things, and the whole kind of the agency model, versus the people on the provider side, the doctors, the patients who are actually administering the care and trying to kind of drive value for what people are paying and trying to keep the cost low and patient value high.
I have a question about that, because like with that equation, right, where you said like insurance companies are hesitant to do payouts, but then we see medical costs.
I wouldn't say they're hesitant to give payouts, but I would say that there is a push. Like the less payments they can make, the more money they make.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the
exactly.
the incentive is not aligned. Obviously, they won't say it out loud.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I mean, similar to that, right? Then why are medical costs going up so astronomically in this environment? If insurance companies are, they're incentivized obviously to make less payouts, but it seems like they're making more payouts, and that's why the cost of medicine is going up so much.
Yeah. Again, I think there's also kind of another kind of force at play here. Over the past couple of years, there has been an increase in acquisitions and entrance of new players from the American ecosystem, from the Japanese ecosystem, and from other ecosystems into Southeast Asia, Malaysia included.
Right.
You mean like hospitals?
Yes, hospitals. Other cost additives that are in there. So the labs, the pharmaceuticals, and all that, and ownerships has changed hands. So the past 5 years, I think we've seen a lot of change in the way things are being priced.
Okay.
There is a push towards, or rather, so you got kind of two camps, right? On one side, there is a camp that's trying to push for what we call value-based healthcare, which means, you're trying to price something, or rather, you're trying to pay for a good outcome rather than pay for the service. But no, on the other side, which is how we normally practice medicine, is when I give a service, I get paid for it.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a very simple example, right? So let's say you have a cough or a cold. Would your doctor get paid for keeping you healthy, or or paid for treating your cough? Typically, treating your cough. But and of course, this is not a good example, but obviously it's not a cough that we're talking about. But let's say or you just kind of replace the cough with any disease, right?
Yeah.
Will the provider be compensated for keeping you healthy? So that is the essence of what value-based healthcare is. So
Right.
in the provider space, there's kind of a divide in a sense. So hospitals are still or people within the healthcare system are still trying to kind of try to marry these two things, right? So is it possible to still be profitable and yet not take a fee for service? So it's like you going to your doctor to get treated maybe 3 times a year. If you get 3 times a year, a doctor gets paid 50 ringgit, for example. If you go 0 times, he gets paid 100 ringgit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So it's outcome-based cost.
Yeah,
right?
outcome-based cost rather than service-based cost. And so if you talk
I'm
about
not sure where that works with Asians though. It's like,
they're-
you know, like I pay $100, I go doctor no times way.
no, but what if the payer was not you?
Right.
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 So what if you signed up for let's say your corporate pays less for your insurance because you don't claim it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so there's kind of this disconnect. So on the fee-based model, obviously, as costs go up, prices. As the costs go up, the price to the patient goes up, right?
Yep.
As stakeholders demand more and more returns, and as the stakeholders become foreign and become different as well, especially in private healthcare, right? The costs keep going up. So
But I guess, say for the average person watching this podcast, I guess I'm curious as well.
Yeah.
So, I'm told often by agents that, you have to buy medical insurance. Why? Because the cost of healthcare, there's inflation every single year.
yeah, that's
And
true.
and we know that...
The last one was 20%, I think.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
something
it was
crazy lah.
something
And
ridiculous,
we know that like our normal goods and services,
Yeah.
not including
Doesn't go-
healthcare,
yeah.
there's no guarantee that it keeps going up, right?
Yeah.
And the other things that I've been hearing is that if you go to a hospital, they're like, oh, you're self-paying, it's cheaper than
That is true.
say you do insurance, right? So
That is true.
what is, maybe the question is, what is the root cause where every year it has to go up
Yeah, that's
regardless?
exactly my question from the start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think and it's one that I think many people are trying to kind of answer as well. My personal opinion is that look, the in the grand scheme of things, right now, in Southeast Asia, the premise is that every hospital can set its own price.
Right.
So,
But there are guidelines,
So-
right? MOH has guidelines to pricing. I've seen them before.
not to everything.
Right.
So there are 1,001 things you can price. In a
But
hospital.
by your
Yeah.
earlier analogy, shouldn't the insurance companies be pushing them downwards as well? Like when the
What do you
hospital
mean?
wants to claim for more things,
Yeah.
the insurance company will go like, wait, that doesn't make sense for my customers. then
So there
why?"
have been hospitals that have lost the contract completely.
Yeah.
From insurance. So every hospital, so think of it this way, right? So in the US, you have one body that manages the payouts.
Medicare.
Right?
Yeah.
No. So no, on the FDA level,
Oh, okay.
for every single treatment, every single diagnostic, there's a code. And the code has a fixed price.
Yeah.
So the hospital has to figure out to do it within that price.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And so that's governed like kind of nationally. But over here in Southeast Asia, and I say Southeast Asia because we're homogenous, right? So whether you go in Singapore or Indonesia, or it's a similar thing, where the insurance companies have to negotiate with every hospital on an agreed price per itemized.
So every insurance company has a
has
different
their
price list.
own agreement with the hospital. on
So
every-
each hospital is negotiating with each insurance
each
company.
insurance company
Separately?
separately. And so there are, and when it comes to renew those prices,
I didn't know that.
For example, when,
Oh.
when things are going up, so let's say as an hospital CEO, right, I look, my this consumable has gone up, I don't know, because of whatever logistics problem.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gone
Yeah.
up 2 times. So I need to adjust the price here. And so I kind of and this is a very simple way of saying it, but they kind of go back to the insurance companies, hey, I need to adjust this. And there has been some cases where the hospital will lose the coverage of the insurance completely. And obviously the CEO was in trouble, right?
'Cause it's competitive,
Yeah,
lah.
because they say, hey, I want to price it, and insurance say, no, I don't want to pay it.
Yeah.
And so there is kind of this little pressure there, and this kind of back and forth. So so in a sense, the hospitals that have scale, they can do it a bit better. The hospitals that are smaller, they struggle, and the costs are higher. And the insurance has more power in terms of the pricing. So there's a bit of a power play here as well.
But it feels like insurance companies are losing that battle, at least in terms of the costing.
I mean,
when you go like
yeah.
for medical.
So there used to be kind of like not to say a joke, but it's not funny, but like an inside it's a kind of a
It's a
thing
joke,
that,
but it's not
yeah.
funny. Okay. Tell us a joke now.
There are a lot of things in Malaysia that are jokes, but are not funny.
I think that's kind of thrown around, right? And I don't think it super applies right now because of the kind of the cost inflation.
Yeah.
But previously, we used to say the poorest people don't have insurance,
Yeah.
the richest people don't have insurance. It's the people in the middle that buy insurance.
Yeah.
Because it is actually cheaper if you want to be kind of covered for life to put away the money you would put in the premium into kind of an FD account and just leave it there. When you're 80 years old, you need it, you use it, you will still have more left over than if you paid the insurance. And
That's very interesting.
So it was a bit of a kind of a there was one kind of geeky guy who did kind of the calculation. I saw this like maybe about 10 years ago already.
But even in the worst case scenario, if he's got cancer,
Yeah, even if
or
it's got
whatever,
cancer, even if it's gone like to $1 million, because the cost of healthcare in Malaysia is not actually that exorbitant.
public. I mean, but private is.
Private. I'm talking about private. So that's why the richest people in Malaysia don't really buy
Need
insurance.
health insurance, right,
right. And especially those that are, people who are, and those who are rich are generational wealth, right? So
Yeah.
in the generational wealth, you have people who are really old in the family, people who are really young. The young ones are okay, but the old ones are paying something like 20, 30,000 in premiums a year.
Right.
So if they had saved from 20 years old, right, kind of just throw in kind of the equivalent of the premium into kind of an FD account, you will have more than enough to pay. Because what you have done is you've given the premium to the insurance company. They have to price in their profits.
Right.
And so what is left over is supposed to try to pay for what you want to pay for in some 20 years. But I mean, obviously, this equation will change as costs go up.
I guess someone told me this. He said there's a debate between hospitals charging too much and insurance not paying or refusing to pay out or increasing premiums. The first question I ask is not really what the hospitals are charging or what premiums. It's actually to look at the insurance company's investment policy. Because that's really the root, because you're collecting all these funds. How are you performing? Because these funds are, all insurance companies invest their money, right? So what is your investment return, right?
Yeah.
Because then that would basically answer your question whether you can
That's
cover
so
your
weird because
premiums,
that's
right?
not how you think about insurance. You just think about insurance as in like saving for a rainy day. You don't think of it as investing.
Yeah, but they have shifted their pitches, right? They have different products. But have you seen any outliers? Any
Not for me personally. No, not in Malaysia. Yeah. But because why I can't brain is that it's been sold that hospitalization keeps going up every single year, but we're not seeing the suppliers of the hospitals or specific drug companies or anyone that's seeing that 7, 10, 15% growth. Even if you say not talking about profit revenue, we're not seeing that.
Are you talking about actual stocks on
actual stocks that supply hospitals.
Yeah.
We're not seeing the revenue doing 10, 15%. So the question is, where's the money going, right?
Quite simple. Into the insurance company's pockets.
That's right.
Into the insurance company's pockets. No, here's the thing, right? So it's kind of like I'll say this as not my opinion. Yeah, this is something that I heard from someone in the insurance industry.
Yeah.
He told me, look, the unknown secret in the insurance industry is that the CEOs change every 3 years. So if you go and look at kind of the hiring records, right, of all the large insurance companies, the top 4, top 5 in Malaysia and even Southeast Asia, every 3 years the CEOs changes. And the reason for that is, and it's funny, right? And so he was kind of, and this guy, he's from the insurance industry, so he can say it, right? He said, look, the insurance companies, they hire a new CEO, and then there is kind of a premium benchmark, right, or a premium KPI. And so they release some kind of ridiculous product that is like really cheap. Like you pay 5,000 in premiums, you get 10,000 ringgit back in some bonuses or something like that. And obviously the take up is huge, right? So people buy it. So he hits his target in 3 years.
And then he
leaves. And then he leaves. And then so when the new guy comes in, he goes,
it's the new guy's problem,
he
right?
goes, oh no, right? And so what they do is they jack the premiums up even more, and if people don't pay, they release a new product.
Right.
And the cycle repeats again and again.
This sounds like the US political scene, actually.
That's every 4 years.
4 years. Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because you get all this corporate governance.
Yeah.
And it's impacting people's ability to access healthcare, right? And I would say on the hospital side we don't see 20%
Yeah.
We don't see 20% jumps, 50%, 40%, 30%, not even like a kind of a 2-digit jump.
Yeah.
There is an increase, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's not that level of inflation. But yeah, on the premium side, we see that, and I think that's a question that insurance CEOs can answer.
Okay. So I think that's a good segue to move on to the next topic. This is actually a post that Alvin put up a few weeks ago, talking about the main difference between S&P 500 and KLCI. And I remember this conversation because this is actually from our last podcast, where he mentioned that on the KLCI, there's a record, correct me if I'm wrong, Alvin, of only 2 companies in the history of Bursa that were listed without profits. Is that right?
Yes, and to add to that, even though the guidelines
Yeah.
do not specify that you need a profit track record, but yet only 2 has been listed.
Oh.
Yeah. And the reason why I bring this up to you is because you're in the startup industry, right? And obviously startups don't often list with profits, right?
No.
Yeah.
Firstly, very, very, very few startups list, number one.
Yes.
And then number 2, they don't they list with like negative.
So with this kind of sentiment
Yeah.
and historical performance in Bursa, like how does that affect the Malaysian startup scene? Like, do you feel that, Malaysian startups or Malaysian investors are a lot more conservative and profit focused compared to other countries?
I think Asians are risk averse.
Okay.
Full stop.
Full stop. And actually, let me take that back. I think the whole world is risk averse compared to the US.
Yeah.
The US market, so this kind of whole venture,
Interesting perspective.
startup markets, right? Exists, like this entire little bubble there in the US, right? Exists because the capital markets are huge.
Yeah.
And the people there invest with an idea that it's okay to lose. Like you win some, you lose some, right? They're very aggressive in the way they think. And so that's why kind of the whole model of venture capital, the ecosystem and all that, when you kind of play it out in San Francisco, in New York, in Boston, in other places in the US, it works because you got a lot of money in the early stage, you got a lot of money in the growth stage, and you have a ton of money in the capital markets. And the public, that they invest in the startups that actually go to IPO, they lose all their money, but they say it's fine. I'll go to the next one because eventually I'll win, and there are winners. And when there is a winner, there is a winner.
Like a 50
massive winner. So the public don't mind losing their money.
Right.
The retail guys don't mind losing money, and so the VCs then take advantage of that. So they invest and they bump the valuations. Like, I was looking at a startup that was based out of the US. He was valuing his startup as something like it's early stage, right? He only made maybe about 100 grand. He was valuing his startup at 20 million. 20 million US dollars. He was like, I'm raising $5 million, 5 mil for 20 mil valuation, and my revenue is 100,000. And he actually raised the money. I mean, I didn't give him the money, but he raised the money. Because the capital markets there allow for these exits, and the retail investors, they don't mind losing money, because eventually they hit a jackpot. But now you take the whole perspective and try to shift it over here to Malaysia, and all that, right? And then you go to a retail investor, hey man, you just buy every startup IPO. Eventually you'll make money off one. We don't see that here because our capital markets are not as strong, and so.
And the historical amount of like unicorns and stuff like that.
No. And it's kind of a
chicken and egg.
Yeah, chicken and egg, right? So in order to have unicorns, you need to have loss leaders, or you need to have losers, tons of losers. The more people willing to lose, then you can create unicorn. But so we have taken kind of and so it's interesting you ask, right? How does that affect kind of the startup ecosystem here? I think there has been one kind of. There has been one maybe bull run, kind of a decade worth of bull run for startups. A lot of money being poured into it.
This is like 2010 grab.
Maybe 2012 to 2019, and 2020 was went south, right? And so they have tried to emulate that by kind of just pumping up, right, and just trying to have a kind of a lovely kind of drive, and it has worked. But what it has also kind of perpetuated is that. Or shown is that how risk averse or how not ready a lot of the retail investors here when it comes, like you can't go to just kind of a mass affluent guy off the street and say, hey, you've got about, I don't know, 500,000 to invest, right? Be prepared to lose 400,000 of it. That's not a story that you want to sell, right?
Yeah.
And so startups then actually but here that's kind of the mismatch, right? In startups, you need to take risks, right? You need, 9 out of 10 startups fail, and that's a true and even if it's not true, right? 7 out of 10 startups fail. That's still a horrible kind of a statistic, and unfortunately, I think that has really impacted the startup ecosystem here.
Right.
People are just not so willing to take risks. A lot of the startup founders actually try to kind of blend their business or blend like an SME style business with kind of a venture.
Service-based or whatever.
Yeah, we see that a lot.
And is that necessary? Like, if you were, a guy looking to start a startup and you wanted to be more attractive to Southeast Asian investors, would you?
Yeah, I think
recommend.
Actually, I think if you look kind of historically at all the VC investments that have been done, a ton of them, or more than half of them, are actually kind of very SME based.
Yeah.
They have kind of a bit of an SME base, doing pretty well, and then they have kind of an innovative layer, if you will, to try to kind of attract VC investors. And these VC investors. You
say the word layer, and I hear veneer.
Yeah, you're not wrong. In many cases, it's such. But here's the problem, because when you invest in venture capital, so I'm taking kind of another layer back, right? So you got kind of the investors in venture capital, and then you got venture capital in the startups, right? So venture capital into startups is kind of the valuation game we're talking about. Now, if you peel back that layer, right, and you talk about why do investors invest in venture capital funds? They invest in it because, look, they can invest their money anywhere. They can put it in the public markets. They can put it in private equities, right? They can put it in stocks. They can put it in mixed funds, feeder funds, hedge funds, so on and so forth. But why do they choose to put it in venture? They choose to put it in venture traditionally because they want to invest in the future. They want to invest in companies that will actually, really change the way we operate and think about life and, humanity and the whole thing. And in order to do that, and obviously, when you actually invest in a winner, you want I put 100,000 in, I get 10 million back.
Yeah.
Right. You can't put in 100 and then
get
hope for
a million. Yeah.
No, like 2x, 200,000. Right. It needs to be like a 100x or kind of 200x, and so that becomes kind of the struggle for some of these investors. And so when we have VC funds fail, right, what happens is that then investors in Malaysia, Singapore, and elsewhere in Southeast Asia, they lose confidence in kind of that venture ecosystem, and many of them actually call it a scam. And they say, look,
because a lot of money goes in,
and nothing to show.
Fashion valet.
Right. Yeah, and there's nothing to show for it, right? And then that in turn hurts the startups, because they then say, okay, let me do nothing innovative. Let me just open kind of a cafe, right? Do a chain.
And the media is responsible for this as well, because they would cherry pick the worst examples and they get great traction.
Yes, and if you look at kind of the unicorns, if you will, of the startup industry here in Southeast Asia, a lot of them are service based, and many of them, I would say, don't really do venture. They just do kind of a same thing differently. Like you look at kind of the F&B chains that have come out. Do you call it a startup? I don't know. Maybe a quick growing business.
Coffee cools and all that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So I mean, and no offense to the people who run these companies. I mean, I know some of them personally. They're good friends, right? Yeah. They do a good job. They found a way to make good money and found good investors to grow. But
it's more about optimizing an existing process rather than something truly groundbreaking.
Exactly. And if I take that lens and try to apply it in our space, which is healthcare, right? We can't be doing the same things the same way, or rather the same things in a slightly different way, in a different package. We need to genuinely have change, and that's kind of why we did what we're doing now.
Now, moving on slightly, do you believe like the local ecosystem in terms of the infrastructure and the support from the government actually helps or hinders the startup scene?
It's funny you show this article. So Kevin's a personal friend.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay.
Hi, Kevin, if you're watching this. He has sorry, I missed out on what exactly you asked.
Do you feel like the government has what effect do you think the government has on the startup scene here?
Yeah, I mean, look, of course the government has a hand to play, but they're also playing a very kind of a very careful chess game, if you will. Look, governments. You look at Singapore, for example. Singapore is huge on startups.
Yep.
Like they invest a ton of money.
Yeah.
And the Singapore government has lost a lot of money as well
Yeah.
in the startup scene. Like they put ton of money into Web3.
Yeah.
Right. And then when Web3 crashed, you know, you just have to kind of wash it out, and that's just how it is. And I like that, and this is kind of a kudos, kind of brownie point for the Singapore government. They dare to take these risks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have the capital to take this risk. They
Yeah.
say, look, you know, we're going to plow in 5% of our whatever into Web3, this
Yep.
new thing.
Yep.
And in the grand scheme of things, like in terms of macro picture, you know, they it's not a ton of money, but in terms of like actually how much money there is a lot, right? It's a couple hundred.
In absolute terms,
In
are.
absolute terms,
But
it's
in
a lot
relative
of money. In
terms,
relative terms,
not-
it's not.
So in other words, you're saying
so-
like they're the most American of all Asian countries.
They are trying to boost the ecosystem that way, and
Okay.
so that's why we see, even in our we see ton of kind of R&D money coming out of the Singapore government. You know, even you know for our firm, we speak to some of these kind of you know these government-led initiatives, and they actually send us startups, and we find these startups great, right? So it's not early investor money; it's government money. So you know,
Would
yeah.
you say that's the same or similar to what the US have done maybe 30 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
actually
yeah.
the government just goes
Yeah.
straight in and just take a bet.
So at the beginning, obviously no. At the beginning, it was private money.
Yeah.
But today, you know, there's a you know the early stage. There's tons of money from the government.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, so I think US has kind of moved because it's kind of a mature ecosystem now for venture,
Yeah.
right? So they've moved to more supportive, like non-financial means of supporting, because the institutions, the universities, you know there's money there already
Right.
funding all these startups, and there's tons of venture investors there as well.
Yeah.
In fact, you can just kind of, you know, you know, you can. There was kind of a joke. It's like, you know, if you want to raise money, if you don't live in kind of 3 of those startup cities, you can never raise money because
Yeah.
all the venture investors are there. And you know, the government, I think in the US has shifted away from that, but in Singapore we still see that.
Yeah.
In Vietnam we see that.
And Singapore
yeah,
becomes kind of like a focal point, right?
yeah,
for the
has
whole-
a bit of a focal point for all the kind of the new ventures coming out.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Singapore is kind of a really tiny market. So a lot of these startups, they incubate in Singapore, they raise all the money, and then they operate elsewhere.
Yeah.
Or they are large.
They only have a maximum of like what 3 million customers. Or
So
whatever
if
it
they have
is.
or they have a large startup like a Series B, a Series C, and then they move into Singapore to raise like solid capital, and then they continue expanding. So I mean, coming back to Malaysia, I think
Yeah.
look.
Let me rephrase
yeah,
the question a little bit. Do you see a change in the culture of supporting startups in the last 10 years? Because we've obviously gone through a few changing governments as well, right? Do you feel like they're more supportive now than they were 10 years ago? Or have they learned their lesson from Grab moving to Singapore? You know, something along those lines of any sort of movement in terms of the feel of the government and how they support startups?
Well, I think the government is trying.
Okay.
Like, look, you know, they have been supportive of startup events
Okay.
that are coming here. Slushed in Penang, for example, that's a setting that's actually going to be run in 2-3 months' time.
So maybe for the audience, what is
yeah.
Slush?
So Slush is like this massive startup festival in Finland, and they have like, you know, tens of thousands of startups that gather there from Europe to just share ideas, knowledge transfer, and all that. And so Slush is kind of for non-Helsinki, non-Finnish editions, if you will,
Yeah.
around the world. And one of them is Malaysia, surprisingly.
Not Singapore.
Not Singapore, right? And so that's happening.
not KL.
not KL. It's in Penang.
Even more interesting.
Yeah. But is the government helping? Yeah. You know, MDEC is supporting.
Yeah.
You know, some others are supporting, and so the government agencies are there. Digital Penang as well as they're supporting. You know, recently or last year, I think with the change of government, we had this KL20 event. I don't know if you guys heard of it.
No,
It's this
actually.
pretty huge government.
Oh, wait.
funded-
Yes.
yeah,
yes,
KL20.
yes.
So,
Yeah,
so they launched, you know, a couple of
Yes.
roadmaps to try to kind of push. But look, you know, I think the government is trying, and you know, as a Malaysian citizen, I would, and as a citizen of ASEAN, you know, I would love to see more and more of these initiatives, and to see Malaysia, you know, really climbing up. And you know, has there been a change? definitely. I think there has been a little bit of shift, but has that trickled down to startups so much?
Yeah.
I think that takes time.
Okay.
So time will tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to another one of your, let's say, areas of speciality. I believe that your more recent startup ventures have some sort of AI components in them. Maybe you can go describe them a little bit more to us first. Like QMed, what are the AI components that you guys are looking at?
So as a firm or just personally my interest in
Maybe as a firm first, and then
Okay.
after that your personal interest.
So I think before we even talk about our investment interest, I think let's talk a little about AI.
Okay.
Right. So I think AI is a bit of a buzzword, right?
Yep.
But AI is to the healthcare or to the startup industry what Web3 was a couple of years ago, and then what fintech was for a couple of years ago, and then move before that, maybe it's kind of an e-commerce platform, and so I think buzzwords have have shifted and evolved over time and changed. So there's always a new buzzword for the new era, right? So AI is currently the buzzword, and there was a very interesting kind of post that I saw in 2019. There were 20 different words to describe AI. So augmented analytics, process recognitions, pattern recognitions, industry 4.0, blah, 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 robotics. So all these terms in 2019, they were termed, they were all had different terms. 2025, they're called AI.
Yeah.
Everything is AI.
Everything is AI.
Yeah.
And it's not wrong. All these things are, or all these kind of lists that have the technology that already exists back in 2019, 2018, they were all artificial intelligences of some sort. But then, today we kind of glump it all together as AI. And so I think when it comes to
the pace of development has increased
yeah.
dramatically in the
Oh,
last
yeah.
4 years,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's for sure. Look, I think we have definitely gone from, X amount of computing points to X to the power of 100,
Yeah.
right? And so, we have definitely grown a lot in the past 4 years.
Yeah.
But it still remains that all these different kind of terminologies exist because they have different applications in very, very specific different kind of industry ecosystems. So I think when people think about AI, they think about ChatGPT, right? They think about,
Midjourney.
Midjourney,
Yeah.
creating images, or some people now create songs, right?
Yeah.
So creating kind of creative content that you couldn't before. And that's a feature that's kind of sort of developed now. But when it comes to startups, right, it comes to venture and our investment thesis, we look at AI as I think you would say a component of a cog. Can you use that? So AI is a software, right? And that software is supposed to do a very specific purpose. So we look at AI technologies or AI kind of feature sets, if you will, within a startup that can greatly change the way we practice healthcare or the way we practice kind of, or the way we manage healthcare. So whether it's the way we pay people, the way we transmit information, the way we fine-tune the communications between different silos. And so in terms of the firm, we look at that. So
Right.
we have a few.
So it's more
AI
invisible type of
very
AI.
invisible type of AI.
Right.
AI is working in the background to make things more efficient, to make to make certain work streams very efficient without human intervention and things like that.
I mean, you're in a medical profession. I always had this idea of the future of how that would change with AI. And in my head was this idea where you just stick your finger in a machine, takes a little blood sample,
And
runs
everything.
it through, and tells you exactly what's wrong with you,
that'd be
deploys some
super cool.
medicine. Is that possible?
That'll be
Or-
super cool.
Huh?
That'd be
And-
super cool.
And I mean, okay, so the first question is that possible, first of all? And the second question is, if that were possible, how many doctors, what percentage of doctors that exist today do we need for that future tomorrow? Because I think that's a huge concern for a lot of people. They're starting to see that AI is cutting a lot of jobs.
Yeah, I think in healthcare, I'll be honest. I think healthcare has seen a bit of a resistance, if I think that's the right word to use, towards AI generally, and that's normal, right, for any new technology.
Because it wouldn't be as profitable?
No, because so from a doctor standpoint, we want patient safety.
Okay.
So we want our patients to have good outcomes. And a lot of what AI does, like so all those, so kind of there's a bit of a caveat, right? So I'm sure you've seen newspaper articles that say, the AI has taken the USMLE exam, a very large exam for doctors and also lawyers. They call it like another exam, and it has done way better than than the average of like Harvard graduates, something like that. But what they fail to
notice.
Or mention, right? Because it's not so kind of headliney, is the fact that these AIs were fed the full information that is available for the patient.
Yeah.
So, for example, you'll say, so let me give you an example question, right? You'll say, okay, patient 50 years old. I'm not saying you're 50, but 50 years old. A male, comes in with this complaint, and then there's labs, lab tests of this. This was the reports, and then we open up, we check this. Now, what do you think the diagnosis is? So all the information is there, but what it fails to take into consideration is that in the real life, when the patient walks through the door into the ER, they do not have all those pieces of information.
Yeah.
Somebody actually digs it out from them.
Yeah.
Correct.
By asking the right questions.
Yeah.
By asking the right, by doing the right tests, by having just by observing the guy, having the right intuition to know certain things.
But I mean, something within ChatGPT could learn that, right?
So that's what kind of AI evangelists are trying to create.
Yeah.
But on the kind of the patient provider side, and maybe to all our viewers here, right?
Yeah.
Would you like? I think the acceptance rate of that is going to take a while to come in.
As with anything, I mean,
No, this is life and death, right? When you walk in, do you want
a computer to do it for you?
A computer do it like a computer to kind of scan you and ask you questions? Would you like an interview from a doctor, right? And
I would like a
check.
computer.
Maybe you're
But
an
if
outlier.
you've watched enough medical TV sitcoms, you're gonna realize that it's how they ask the questions, it's the observation, it's that human part.
The human part is what's curious to me, because I mean it's human, but it's still within the same structure of, okay, you ask this first, you can ask this second, and so on and so forth, right? I think the point at which when I felt that I had a little bit more confidence in AI was when I remember that I prompted ChatGPT for a Manglish poem. It was very early in the days of ChatGPT. It's been around for maybe a year or something like that, and it generated perfect Manglish, which I can't describe that personally to someone. If I were to teach a Caucasian guy how to speak Manglish, I'm not sure I would
Manglish
be able
Malaysian
to do
English,
that
right?
knowledge transfer.
English.
It's a pretty tricky knowledge transfer, and somehow they managed to do it, and it was perfect. Like the la's and all that were all in the right places and all that, right? So I don't foresee AI have to have an issue with finding iterative questioning for the medical profession, as compared to when I go to a doctor sometimes and they recommend me an antibiotic for what is most likely a viral fever. I mean, how many times has that happened with?
So I think there's a difference between like having a common cold and going in, and having say a potential cancer diagnosis.
Okay.
I'm trying to distill this for you.
He's trying to layman it for us.
Right. Yes, please.
So
please.
when a doctor asks you questions, right, tries to investigate what and decide what tests to run and all that.
Okay.
They are going through in their head, both intellectually, what it could be, but also from their years of experience and the thousands of patients that they've seen, whether there's a pattern. There's a lot of and the inputs that a doctor is having is not as programmable as you would think. Like, for example, I give you an example, right? So, say a patient comes in with noisy breathing. It's just feeling a bit faked, right? What could it be? If you Google it or ask ChatGPT, right? They will have a how does ChatGPT decide what to list as the top 3 or top 4? Maybe they'll do the internet search, right? They'll do a bit of digging there. Okay, out of breath, right? And all that, and then they'll come up with the top 3 or top 4 most common. But as a physician, you look at the person, and then you without even doing those processing, you can kind of already guess what the disease is, and then you just run a test straight away. So there is kind of there is a disconnect between. So if you look at kind of all the, and there's a reason why, right? I'm trying to explain this. And I'm struggling, as you can tell. And this is why AI in healthcare has been limited to a couple of things for now. It's been limited to AI note taking. We see that.
Okay.
Right? It's been limited to AI diagnosis support. We have seen that as well. So
diagnosis support is a perfect example.
Diagnosis support, right? And there is also AI on the business side of healthcare.
Yeah.
So, for example, just organizing things and files and all that communication.
Optimizing supply chains and so on.
So we have seen these broadly, I think these 3 applications.
Yeah.
And obviously, the most obvious one is imaging.
Yeah.
Because you can train it to recognize images. Now, in these couple of applications, it is very, very useful, right? So I think the one that you're talking about that's maybe most close to what you're talking about is the kind of the AI diagnosis support.
Yeah.
So there are 2 things, right? So if the diagnosis is wrong, who do you blame? I think that's the first.
Yeah. So liability is obviously an issue.
One, but on the operational side of things, right?
Yeah.
So I've used some AI. Like, look, diagnostic support systems have been in existence for like 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
Physicians in the US and in Australia have been using it.
Yeah.
And it's sort of mandated in some hospitals as well.
Oh,
The
okay.
junior
I didn't know
doctors,
that.
When they come in, but they have to see the patient. They take all the signs and symptoms and then they key into the system.
Yeah.
And the system will tell them, okay, check for this.
Yeah.
Right. But legally, that's why there's a reason why it's called decision support system and not decision maker.
Right. Because the human makes the decision.
Yeah, because the human makes the decision and is responsible for the decision.
Yeah.
And so, and I've used some of those, and the way, I mean, they sometimes when they suggest something, it's so basic that it's even not necessary.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, do we see a real application for it someday in the future? Yes, I believe that there is a way to make it more efficient, and maybe one day you really will be able to just do that. Right. And you have already kind of a whole screening kind of like, okay, you may have this, and all that, right? But as we see AI today and the way it's being applied, we don't really see that jump being as simple as as it seems. Yeah.
So I'm Star Trekking it right now.
Yeah, you're a bit Star Trekking it right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
But
Replicate the.
To be honest, I would be happy if they are, I don't know if you guys been to a outpatient visit to a hospital recently. I don't know if you've done this where they ask you to rock up at 7 a.m. to take number.
Yep.
And then but your appointment's at 2 o'clock.
Yep.
And then you take your second trip to the hospital. And then you're going to wait an hour anyway.
Let me guess, was that for your wife?
Yes, it was.
Okay, you can't mention.
I'm not going to mention hospital, but
No, you don't have to mention.
I don't even think you need AI for those kind of systems.
No, you don't.
Like, why
you
isn't
don't.
anyone?
No,
it's
you
quite
don't.
simple, right?
Yeah.
It's.
It is.
Can it be done online? I mean, like you
know
book
what,
a,
my
you book a
takeaway-
flight, international flight online.
Yes.
I can't make an appointment online. I don't
Yes.
get it.
So my takeaway from that is that corporations move so slowly
Yeah.
that everything that all these optimizations that we're thinking of are Star Trekking it. Like they're just like too far away, to be implemented in a real system.
I don't know. I mean, something like that. You don't need AI to.
Yeah, okay, but let me just withdraw the conversation because I think we're running short on time right now. One of the things that we wanted to ask you also is in the broader context. I know you talked about it in terms of the medical context, right? Is AI a threat to A, the job market, and B, if it's so swift, the consumer market? Do you know what I mean? Because there are real fears there
The B2C,
right now. That AI will replace a significant amount of jobs, and as we know, internet era, word processing, industrial era, these kind of things do happen. It's just that the pace that we're talking about with AI, at least perceptually, seems to be going very, very fast to the extent where people might think that it's a little bit more damaging to the economy. What do you think about that?
No, I think you're right on the money. Look, there's a reason why there are layoffs. There's a reason. I mean, look, obviously, the economy itself isn't doing so well.
Right.
But talking about AI specifically, yes, there will be a lot of jobs that will be replaced by AI. Jobs that are very repetitive.
Yeah.
In my kind of previous project that we did, there was a particular workflow that we automated, and unfortunately, for one of our clients, it removed
A substantial amount of jobs.
Yeah, quite a substantial amount of jobs, 3 or 4 digits.
Okay, so the
amount of
follow-up
people.
question to this is even more scary. When you talk about repetitive work, this is something that Southeast Asia is known particularly for. So do you see that being a bigger effect in this region or in Asia
Oh yeah,
compared to other countries?
yeah, definitely. I think our level of creativity or the lack of it, I think, will come back to bite us in the butt.
Okay.
And I think, and I say this very frankly, right? And I know probably it's not the most politically right thing to say, but if we don't, and I think the saving grace is that I think the latest generation is very globalized.
Okay.
From a very early stage, they understand that the value they bring, is not in repetitive work. And I don't think you will find a lot of 15, 14, 13-year-olds wanting to do repetitive work, right? It's something that the older generation have gotten used to, where we grew up in factories, right? You go into an industry, you work there, you just do one specific thing, I don't know, typing in something, and that's all you do, right? And those jobs will go obsolete. If not now, then very soon.
What kind of time frame are we talking about here?
I mean, it's difficult to predict. I mean, no one can really predict the future. But I think at the rate we're going, it won't be that long. I don't think it will be much more than 10 years.
If you allow me to make it a little bit personal for you, how old are your kids?
My kids are 2.5 and 5 months.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, so in that context, do you feel like there is concern?
Not really. I think for children that are very young, that's okay, because they have not been trained to do repetitive things.
But if they're 15 now.
But if they're 15 now, so like I said, right, I think the people below 20 are okay. Because because they're quite globalized in that sense. They didn't grow up with kind of a let's say if you're from, I don't know, Kampa. So I don't grow up with a village mindset. Only in Kampa, all I can do is, I don't know, sell bottles to the next guy or whatever. Right? They have a very, outward facing, and I think from a very early stage, they are exposed to other cultures and the way other people think. Now, obviously there's a downside to all those things, and we can talk about that another time. But I think people below 20, so the kind of the alpha generation, is okay. The ones that are in trouble are the ones who are working now.
Yeah, just joined
the
the workforce.
20s and the early 30s, trying to kind of start up, and they're maybe in kind of a service line, or kind of doing something that they can just do every day with an SOP.
Yeah.
And I think the kind of the tipping point is when the cost of getting an AI to do your work is significantly less than hiring you, significantly less trouble, and that's when your job will be in trouble.
But my view, I think if you look at the last 100 years of massive innovation, at every point we've actually seen net increase of jobs. Then there are ones that are created, and then there are those that are displaced, right? I mean, if we kind of think about it, Henry Ford, first car, everyone was horse and carriages. Yes, anyone who was breeding horses, that was building carriages, of course they're out of job. But look how many jobs the car industry has created in the last 100 years. It's significant, right? So I think it's less, if you ask me, it's less to do with the tech overtaking the job, right? It's how can humans or people actually reskill and change, because every time we have an innovation, there is more opportunities, right? Same as we think about the internet today, it's really changed our lives. But would you say that's replaced net jobs minus what is replaced, right? It's actually plus, right?
It's the thing is, like, obviously that's always been the argument, right? That a new technology will generate more jobs as it replaces the jobs. It's just the pace at which that happens that is the concern, I guess, with AI moving a lot more quickly and a lot more sure-footedly, I feel, compared to a lot of other early industries like, the internet and so on and so forth. We had IoT and all these kind of things, right? With AI, whatever is coming out is being accepted very widely by society as a whole. I mean, do you know a single person out there who is not using some element of AI right now? You compare this to blockchain. Do you know a single person using the blockchain today? I've always talked about this with you.
Yeah,
Adoption, right?
You talk about, crypto as well in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
It's net jobs, man, not minus, right? I remember, I think we did one podcast where someone mentioned that, crypto has no value and that...
Was it me?
No, it wasn't. it was a newspaper article. But if you really look at it, there's a lot of jobs that has been created from this new industry, right? I think we also need to assume that not everyone is going to implement AI straight away, right?
Yeah, that's true.
If you're a large conglomerate where
Yeah.
your board of directors are majority baby boomers or very senior in nature, which are maybe a bit less tech, savvy. They might not jump on a bandwagon. They're like, let's wait and see what's here. Everyone does. We don't want to be the first, right?
And there's also risk as well.
Yeah, correct.
Because
There's risk.
AI is generating things that you might
yeah,
not be able
so
to
I was actually gonna, and I'm glad you brought it up because I think I was actually gonna end what I was saying just now by saying I think human beings are more resilient than we take them or we take ourselves to be sometimes. So will AI replace jobs? I think that's true.
Yep.
It will. But will people find themselves out of work? I don't think so. I think when you are pushed to want to survive, you will find ways to make money, and you will find other ways to get hired into other kind of things. And so you are right. It is quick, right? The scale. Like I don't think I mentioned this previously on this chat, but there was another kind of US project that I was not involved, but I was talking to. They were acquiring 3 companies a week and replacing or displacing everybody in there other than 3 to 5 people. Because they had a giant kind of, they call it AI now, but previously they just call it automated systems. Where they were put in place. And they would buy out, so they would just go in, they buy. So they own something like 4,000 or 5,000 companies now. So it's huge. But were they displacing people by the minute? Yes. But did all these people go on to be bankrupt and all that? No. Look, when you are pushed into a corner, you will turn around and you'll find some other ways. It's like the horse trader, right? When he lost all his horses, did he just go drink himself to death, or did he turn around and say,
do something else?
Let's do something else.
I think narrative-wise, it's nice to know that people will find their place eventually. But in the short term to medium term, will there be a dip in, let's say, consumer spending and those kind of things based on these things that you guys are talking about?
Don't know.
I haven't thought about
beyond your pay grade, beyond my pay grade.
I haven't thought about
think
that.
it's hard to measure, but we're going to look at a lot of new jobs that are being created because of AI as well, right?
Is there an example of a new job being created because of AI besides
mean,
Guru? Because I see Guru a lot.
I think you can see AI prompting, right? AI prompting is a job
prompt
it's a job scope now.
Prompt engineers.
Prompt engineer.
In healthcare, we have analytics teams now in hospitals.
Okay.
It's kind of weird. We never had tech teams in hospitals before, but in the past 5 years, hospitals are forced to hire.
Right.
Well, not all of them, but some of them who are more forward thinking, they say, "Hey, we need to start, being on this trend." And I think coming back to just what you just said, I think, it's hard to say. I think whether there will be kind of a bit of a short term a dip, but do we need to be worried?
We should be concerned at the very least.
You should think.
Yeah.
If your job is repetitive, you need to think about, about whether your boss is going to buy an AI to replace you. Prompt engineers, the same project I was talking about, they are hiring by the hundreds. All AI. So the job description is designer, but with AI prompts. You don't design your own. You must learn how to design with AI prompts.
Bye bye Lim Kok Wing, but Bye bye Lim Kok Wing. Lim Kok Wing is just a bunch of guys prompts
I mean,
into
you kind of
like
think
a-
about, you kind of think about, since kind of ChatGPT came on scene, you
Yeah.
think about the amount of money is being poured in.
Mm.
I mean, it's on all different levels. I mean, even non-tech, right?
Yeah.
Land in Johor being bought. Construction companies have to construct data centers. The guys that I don't think TSMC is firing anybody, right? In fact, they're net hiring. Look at Nvidia today, right? I mean, there's still a lot of brick and mortar stuff that
Oh, yeah.
still needs to be
Fair,
built.
very
Oh,
good
yeah.
point. Yes,
You know what I
yes,
mean?
yes,
So,
yes.
so, my view, I think it's still a net. I don't think it's a. I think it's a net positive rather than net negative. That bit painted by.
So you think it's going to create more jobs than it's going to get rid of?
Yeah.
I personally think it's going to get rid of more jobs than it creates. Yeah.
Last year there was and I think there are more than one now, but
Yeah.
no, sorry, not last year, 2 years ago, 2023, there was a agri-tech company that tried to sell drones to observe crop. I'm sure you've heard of this.
Oh yeah. What
Now
was
there
it
now
called
there are
again?
plenty, right? So that time I think they were because AI was just starting to come out, so
Yeah.
they were one of the first to say, hey, we can use artificial intelligence to tell you where your crops, and they tried to sell to some farmers.
Yeah.
And the farmers looked at the cost. It's like, oh, okay, 36 or 40,000 US for one drone. And then they're like, no, because I can get a worker for
Just do it.
20% of that.
Feel the land or
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
and I'm not gonna take a 5x increase in my cost.
yeah.
And so there is still that pushback, right? And the companies who are selling these new tech things, they need to make profit, right?
Yeah.
So they price it, they try to price it sort of, I guess, globally, but it doesn't work in Southeast Asia. And so, I mean, the cost of tech is still, I think there's a balance to it. There are certain fields that will not be disrupted so easily.
Fair. I think those
yeah,
are both
but
very
yeah.
valid comments. Yeah. Okay. I think we're actually out of time for this episode to not cover a lot of these other things that we're talking about. We can get another podcast to cover these out, basically. In terms of just very very quickly, let's just tackle this last one because you guys are both familiar with the business environment in Malaysia. How much are the things that are happening in the US going to affect what's going on over here? Just very quickly, from the top of your heads before we wrap up this episode. Like the tariffs. I think what we spoke about last time during the podcast was, a lot of business is going to come in from China to, and then go out to from Malaysia to other countries, in case some of the tariffs are targeting China. Yeah, I don't know. In the startup space, is there anything like kind of rumblings, industry rumblings about this kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know if I regret domiciling in US. No, just kidding. Yeah, I mean, we went in with I went in with two eyes open, right? So
Okay.
we said, look, from a cost to outcome basis, and from a just a kind of investor comfortability type of kind of index, right? US is okay. There is obviously some downsides. We can't invest in some countries. We can't take money from people who have money in those countries, and that has been communicated very clearly to us from the beginning. And yeah, I think with the tariffs, it's definitely thrown a bit of a flux into otherwise rather peaceful or status quo type of environment. And so yeah, I think.
And
I
more
think,
so now,
yeah.
the tariffs are not even certain, right? Because they're tit for tat, and they'll be removed at a whim and put it back at a whim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think most international investors will obviously will be quite diversified already, but may even diversify even more to protect themselves against any sudden movements or changes.
Will they also be a bit more tight-pocketed, you reckon?
I think so. Yeah.
In the next,
I think for the next the next kind of this short period of time where things have been in flux,
6 months to a year.
it's going to be tough to say, hey, let's go all in on, I don't know, this country or that country and all that. And some projects will be affected, actually, not may, but will be affected.
And then with that kind of insight, like what would you advise to investors out there right now who are looking, maybe I should invest in the US market or the Malaysian market or so on and so forth?
Well, I mean, never have a single country risk lah. I mean, that's I think that's important. But I think currently, if you ask me, like today is what, 3rd of March, I think things are a little bit overblown, my view, because it's just crazy, right? You know, with a few words, you know, things change so much. So I think sentiment is what I think. I think that eventually we're going to be used to the chaos.
You mean it's like transitioning from a non-parent to a parent, lah?
Yeah. I mean, like it's just chaos after chaos after chaos, right? And then you're just gonna be like, you know, we're a bit numb to this chaos. Right?
No.
I think that's how I think the markets are gonna react. I mean, unless there's some major crazy thing, because you know today 25 tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Tomorrow, let's wait 30 days and see. And you know, there are only so many tricks you can pull up your sleeve, right? But I think you're just gonna get.
I feel like they keep pulling them out, man. Oh, here, have a coronavirus. No, let's you know, get a guy who supplies rockets for NASA to suddenly do Nazi salutes. You know, no, let's put some terrorists just for fun. It just feels like it's been non-stop for the last.
It has been
4 years. Yeah.
Well. Yeah, I mean, like Biden, like the ones the crazy ones, like Biden before he, like a couple of days before he left office, he passed the chip ban, right?
Yeah.
Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier. You're like, what? You know, and then you know Trump comes in, so you know I think it's definitely just embrace volatility and stick to your fundamentals. Should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think we should wrap the episode.
Okay, thank you for watching Borak Bursa. Till the next one. See you guys again. Bye bye.
Thanks, Shaun.